All right, good evening. David, do you have
Hi.
any opening remarks you would like to kick off this webinar with first?
I'll make them. Yeah.
Okay.
This is David Weicker, and I am very pleased that we have Jennifer Campbell to present to you what she has already presented, but with modifications. And she's going to talk about the call room and the pathway for World Athletics and World Para Athletics, and what some of the differences are and what some of the similarities are. Okay, take it away, Jennifer.
Thank you. Welcome, and here we go. Next slide, please. This is my little introduction, but I do have to always, when I talk about the call room, I have to thank Dave Watson, Mike Illingsworth, who are two Ontarios who have since left us. I learned a ton from these two gentlemen, and it was fun. So this is the experience that I've had in my career so far within the call room. Next slide. Okay, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to do the call room judges, the volunteers and their duties, the inspection process within the call room, and call room setup. Now, when I talk about the call room process, I'm going to be talking about what I think a call room should be. I'm a fan of having an open area. And that's what I'm going to focus on, because I think I need to, as a call room chief judge or as a call room referee, I want to see 360 degrees of that area. So onward and upward, purpose of a call room. This is the same across the board, whether it's World Athletics or World Para Athletics. Our job is to make sure these track and field athletes are competition ready. As I've just said, we're all under one roof in a secure area, and I mean secure. You have to have special, especially when it's a world championship, or you should have, or an international competition, you should have special ID tag that allows you, because the people that guard the doors on the entrance or exit will always be inspecting that. I do not want anyone who in that call room who should not be there, and that's important for safety. Okay. All athletes, we stress this to them, as the field is part of the surface area, the call room, that they have to respect the rules that are being set out there that we have for the call room. And our key process is always the check-in and the inspection process. Everybody, there are no exceptions when an athlete comes in. If the athlete is coming in within para with either a guide or an assistant, they come in as one, they are both inspected. Another key point is it's the first point of contact for the actual meet venue. Yes, they've been out in the warm-up area, they're coming in. Whether you'll use a controlled check-in gate, that's up to you. I like them at bigger meets because it does make things work smoothly when the athletes come into the call room, that they have gone through some of a check-in process at the call room gate. Next one, David. Okay, everybody knows this. It's common across the board. This is where they come. We inspect everything. As I said before, it's restricted and it's secure. And I've just said accreditation codes, and that's great. But at the same time, it has to be wheelchair tire friendly, spike friendly, so there's no incidents that happen, okay? It is key, paramount, that it must be a place of calm, okay? My preference, as I was just stating in my opening remarks, I have done a call room where we've had cubicles, And what happens is elite athletes want to see what other elite athletes are doing. And they crowd the front door for the pod leader. You remove those barricades, those walls, then they can see what's going on. They want to make sure the star athlete from whatever country is not getting special treatment in getting an area to warm up and stretch when they have to be seated in their pod areas. Again, coaches and team managers, they're not allowed in the call room. They will never have accreditation to be allowed in there. Also, it was a bit of a glitch in Toronto when we had the Pan American Games there, is they decided to use the call room for a meeting, which delayed us about 2.5 hours trying to get set up to get this call room ready. So we suggest that as if you were the call room chief judge, that you make sure this coach's technical meeting does not happen in the area. Because once again, I said, causes a delay. And this is also the time that you're training some staff and doing a review of what could be happening in the call room. When we did the paras in Toronto, I made the decision, and I think it was a wise decision. Often at paras, especially when countries are coming to us here in Canada, we have a bigger team that they can come in, walk their athletes through, and they can see what the call room looks like. Senior staff is there to answer any questions that they had. And it worked out perfectly, and we got a lot of thank yous for that. If you decide at an international meet, it's always nice to have some interpreters there. We did have a couple with us in Toronto, and it worked out really, really well. Next slide.
I won't have the thing, but when I click.
Okay, call room referee. Now, your call room referee could be someone directly from Canada who is a level 5 chief call room official, or it's ITOs. Their job is to be responsible for issues that need to be resolved. If the chief call room judge cannot resolve it. Okay. At most international meets, you will find that ITOs are appointed to these positions. I was fortunate here in Canada, I was allowed to be appointed call room referee at a meet, and was able to, because there was no ITOs to fit there. Once again, chief call room referee, the chief for the call room or the ITO, they're the only ones that can issue the solid yellow or solid red cards. And that is a point to remember. Next one. Okay. This person who does this job has to be flexible, be able to think on your feet quickly. Oftentimes in Toronto or major meets, even if the call room, let's say it's not opening till 7, I most likely there a good hour and a half to make sure everything is set to work. Whoever is senior staff with me, also we meet together as a group and do a review, and we have discussions. Okay. There's a list, a ton of them. I'm not going to go detailed in all of them, but pick a spot for your call room area that is close to the warm-up and it's close to the stadium. It worked out really, really well in Toronto because we used the indoor stadium, and it was only a 5-7 minute little jog over and in we go. Key thing is you must make sure you select staff that can that can work together, and also that they understand that whoever is the chief call room judge is the person that is in charge. Make sure they know who the chief call room referee is, or the ITOs and introduce them so they feel part of the crew. Meet flowchart schedules. Okay, this is where you work very carefully with the TD, the technical delegate, and with the meet schedule to make sure it works. A key thing is you must select spots where this schedule can be posted that all staff, all athletes and the coaching staff of the various countries or clubs can see it, okay? So that means wherever they get dropped off, there should be schedules there. Where they enter the stadium, there should be schedules posted there. There should be at the warm-up sites, schedules posted there as well. Okay. Also, all the equipment is the responsibility of the chief call room judge to have that. That means from your event signage, the measuring, hip numbers, chairs, tables, clocks, vests, whatever is required, whether it's for World Athletics or World Para Athletics meet, your job is to make sure that is all there for the call room to have. Again, your key job is to make sure the meet is on time. We have to be going by the stadium clock, okay? Another key point is communication, okay? With the chief SA, chief starter assistant on the track, the competition director, the technical delegate, you have to have their phone numbers. You have to have your cell phone on, but on vibrate, because they could call you at any time or you have to call them to check on something. Always be in touch with the technical delegate. They are part of your support system when you're doing this job. Next one, please. Okay. Again, as I said before, you have jurisdiction to resolve things. If it can't be resolved, then you go to the ITO or the chief call, the call room referee. Key paramount is to be in touch with the training and assigning of staff. If you're coming from, for example, I came from Winnipeg, I went to Toronto, I was always in communication with Renee Vandel on assigning and who and what things would be allowed. Once again, what is going to be legal and what are going to be the illegal items? This list has to be approved by the meet manager, the competition director, and the TD. Okay. Once again, key points, especially with World Para, is where the medical center is, in case there's issues that happen in the call room. Washroom, where are the washrooms located? And the washrooms that are used for the athletes and for the call room staff have to be separated from where officials have their washrooms, where the general public goes for the washroom. They're restricted. That's why you will find many meets that have those portable John lovely washroom facilities to use. Part of the responsibility when you are the chief call room judge is that you are responsible for supervising the warm-up areas. That's important. Also, when you're doing World Paras, you have to have a washer and dryer because health regulations require that these vests have to be washed. As soon as they go through post control, they are taken off, picked up by an official from the call room, brought back to the facility, and they head off immediately to be washed. So you can't be skimpy on ordering vests, especially in World Paras. You have to have probably double the number because of the use, and it demands that these vests be washed. Okay. Another responsibility is making sure you have your stopwatch, And from the exit door, because that's where the time starts of the call room, to the start line, you time that, or to the event site, you time that. I always follow the policy of rounding off. If it takes me 2 minutes and 45 seconds, then I will round it off to 3 minutes as the travel time. Okay. As I've stated before, I love when I can have a call room control check-in gate. And that's usually only done at major meets. It just makes life easier because they can tell you, no, those aren't legal spikes. Okay, you're competing at the Pan Am Games, but I see you have the Olympic logo uniform. That's illegal. Get that changed. So they help the factors there. All right, part of your responsibility is your staffing numbers. How many are you going to have? At major meets like the Pan Am Games, Worlds, I always think it's a great to have a senior staff that has 2 assistants. One who will be the responsible for the track, all the track events, and the other one responsible for all the field events. And then you need staff to run the track pods and the field pods. And they have all these steps that they have to go through and then check. That has to be done. So pod leaders and the 2 assistants, they are in charge of, plus whoever is the chief call room judge at this meet, of making sure that the training session for every pod is done the same way. That they go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Okay. Factors to consider. Oh, hang on, I have to get the door. Hang on. Sorry, I'm in a webinar. I can't. Thank you. Oh. Sorry about that. These are the factors that you have to consider when you're setting up and locating and where you want to be. Okay, and they're pretty straightforward. Next one, please. I think we went too far. Can we back up one? Nope, next one. Okay. Key factors. Failure to report the call room is a DNS, did not start. When that happens, immediately you're on your phone to the TD, the technical delegate, to let them know. Now, there's a window of opportunity, justifiable reasons, okay, which are factors that are independent of the athlete's own action. And the only 2 categories here, if there was an issue with the official transportation system, whether it's provincial, national champion, international meet, or error in the published call room flowchart schedule. That's why it is so important. There can be no errors. I always do my draft, or if someone else is doing it, I ask them to do it in pencil and we double check it. That's why we need to have senior officials double checking so there's no errors. Next one. The beauty of having field events is all their instructions are done in the call room, okay? The chief of the event leads the athletes out, and either we put a volunteer or a call room judge at the back of the line and they march them out to the event site. Okay, also volunteers, and I prefer volunteers using at the entrance and exit doors, because most of those people who are going to be doing the inspections will be call room judges. Next. Layout of the call room. This will be independent and depends on the level of the competition, the number of athletes, and the meet timetable or the meet schedule, and the location you were given to work with. Sometimes you might have a say in it on the selection. Sometimes you're not given, you're just told where it is. The best thing that you can do is sort of do some drafts and find out what the best will work for the location that you were given, because you'll never have the same ideal situation for each meet that you were doing. Next one. Shapes and sizes. Okay, as you all know, I prefer a large area, no barriers, just open, clear view, 360 degrees. It is helpful if you can get a TV that does keep them calm. And I think it's very important that athletes need to know what other athletes are doing. If they see that they're boxed in an area, it just creates barriers and they get upset, and we don't want the athletes to, we want them to remain calm, not agitated. So that is a personal preference of mine. Next. These are just sample pictures. You've probably seen them before. This, the one, the track there, that was our setup lane for the wheelchair races. We had stall 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8. We just moved the curtain, out they go. This was taken from a manual from the World Para Athletics that I copied and put in, and you can see there's different routes, and you can see different bays that they have set up through the routes. One was the bottom one were big, huge area. It's basically that the wheelchairs rolled right in, they went in, final call room, chest, and they went directly out. Next slide. And there is what I prefer is the open areas. Both of these are from Toronto. Next. Again, these are just the sample pictures of, you know, the pod stands, the signage, and the signage has to be the biggest font that you can make if they don't have them already made. So that's going to be font 72. This is our work area. It is great when you have, each pod has its own clock, so the group can see that, as you see, it's about 3 minutes after 2 on this clock, and our group that's coming in is the 5,000 meter, and it was T54 coming in, our work area. Next. Often you will be thrown a curveball. They will say it's one heat, one flight. This was a throwing group that was going to go out and came back in, and the technical delegate is there. He's standing at the back while my volunteers are sorting out the tags into 2 groups. And that's David Katz from, I believe, the United States there. And David's going in with the arrow there. They said they're now all going to be in one big group. We had a big group and they wanted it separated into 2 groups. So we had to get down and sort it out. Once again, there's a picture that you've seen before. We tried to be fancy, put a skirt on our working table as you enter in to the call room. Next. Samples of the pods. I explained about the lines on the floor for wheelchairs. Next. Okay. I'm a firm believer all inspections have to be done in front of the athlete. Okay. And because of the pod system, you sit down, the athletes should see what you are doing. Okay. No pod member is to talk to the athletes unless a question is asked. Now, this picture was taken in Moncton at the World Juniors. And in the inspection, you can see it. I've got it circled. The athlete's looking at the official that's inspecting the shoe. He's going with the spike gauge up and down the rows to make sure everything is fine. Next slide. All right, call rooms. Basically the same. We're still using the U-shaped pods. I prefer that, as I've said before. The number of chairs will change. For World Athletics, it's 2 chairs, one for the athlete, the other for the sport bag. Okay, and this allows separation, but with the chairs side by side, if I'm sitting in number 1, I'll take the first chair and I put my sport bag in the second chair, then the second athlete will be sitting in the third chair and the sport bag will be in the fourth chair. There is no exit. It's still like a horseshoe. And to enter and exit, you have to go through the pod leader who's at the front. And it sort of acts as a control system right there. Okay. Now in World Para, the number of chairs will increase. Okay. And that's just the way it is. You have to make sure there's enough room to make sure that the day chairs, as we refer to them, the wheelchairs can move around in their pod area. Next. All right, this is the same. It does not change for World Athletics, for World Para. Okay, the check-in, the inspection. Yes, we're adding the helmet. We're adding the ear canal inspection. So added to, because this is new, ear canal, I have added to the list that we have to have little flashlights so you can look into the ear canal. We've always done detection. We've always done cover. Okay. We've always done delivery. Make sure they get delivered to the correct start line, to the correct field event. All right. Now, what is added for World Para, okay? Final approval of the throwing frames, race running frames, and racing chairs. And you're doing the measurement maximum allowable standing height measurements and the vision impaired athletes. Next. Okay, check-in, all the same, added to the list. We do the maximum allowable standing height. There's a couple methods, we'll show you pictures. Eye patches, it is the responsibility of the chief call room judge to inspect after the pod crew has inspected to make sure that there is no light or anything in the eye patches. The visual coverings do seal the eye socket area. Tethers have to be measured, and that's very easy to get a board and get a tape measure or a wooden stick, and you cut it and you make it and fits in with the marks. I made up one just last week for the tethers. The racing chairs, race running frames, that's big in Europe, the race running frames. As I said before in other webinars, I think there's only one female athlete in Ontario. Helmets, you have to carefully inspect those helmets. They like to modify them. They can't be modified, sorry, my apologies there. It has to be approved with seals, sort of a validation sticker inside. Okay, we've done that one. Okay, I think we missed some things. Can we go back just a little bit? Okay, we've done that one. The next one. Okay, we've talked about that one. Okay, there's the World Para Athletics bib allocation, where the bibs can go. So for the categories there, it's pretty clear where the bibs can go. Next one. Okay, this is a good diagram for me in the sense that there's the pod. Now, if you look at that big blue sort of cross, that's where your pod leader would stand. And I always make sure I have 2 crews. So you'll have one crew. If we look on the left side, where there's an arrow pointing as we're looking into that pod, they would go halfway around. So if there's 12 athletes in that pod, they will do 6. The other group on the right-hand side will do the other 6. So they go in, as soon as they're done, they come out and report their findings to the pod leader. If you notice in the circled area, sort of in the top right-hand corner, the top large poster there is what is illegal, cannot be brought into the call room. And there's also, it lists the heat sheet and the, for that group that's supposed to be in that pod, okay? People who are patient are ideal to work with, especially when you run a call room. Calm, cool, collected, but you must be efficient and effective in making sure that you do what you were assigned to do as the measurement or your task in the inspection process. I insist that all call rooms, the athletes, if they ask a question, you can ask it. If you don't know the answer, then I suggest you get the chief call room judge in there. If it's a question that is outside their jurisdiction and scope, then you call the ITO over, or you get the chief, the call room referee down, and they will help you answer that question. Okay, once again, with physical impairments such as the foot club, an athlete may need to wear a shoe which does not meet sort of the normal meet requirements. That is acceptable as long as the shoe does not give any unfair additional assistance to the athletes. Usually, if you got a question mark there, then you get the TD down or the competition director down there, and they will look at the shoe. Often at World Paras, they will have people, ITOs that are experts in this, and they'll come over and help you. Okay. Okay, normal call room steps for the shoe scheme. Well, that's an interesting, constantly evolving change from World Athletics. As it stands, we'll go with this step 1, step 2, step 3. Cross-reference the shoe scheme list. Okay, you have to make sure the shoes pass. And there's the rule numbers for World Athletics and World Para. If a shoe does not pass, it's illegal, it cannot come in, so it has to be removed from the call room. Now, either the athlete can remove the shoe and take it to his or her coach, or if we have if they find a solution for the shoe scheme officer, then we'll get a definition on that and see what that rule is. Okay. Okay. Call room, once again, we all know it's a competition site. You do not enter the call room with illegal items. You can be disqualified if you come in with illegal items, and that will all depend on the call room referee or the ITOs that are in the call room with you. Athletes can be disqualified if their equipment does not meet the rules and regulations for their sport class and event. And the key rule here is rule 6.16, non-compliance on equipment. The rule of thumb is basically the first card would be a yellow card. If it happens again, second time, then it becomes a red, and then there's a disqualification. Okay. Inspections, checking orthotics and prosthetics. Okay. It's straightforward. The rules that explain there about the shoes. Okay. You cannot have anything added into the shoe, inside or outside, which would give you an unfair advantage. So the shoes have to be clearly and carefully inspected. There's the classes there for World Para about measuring. And the key thing is to make sure if it's amputee, that both legs are balanced, and we could be called upon, a call room judges, to measure their prosthetic. It's okay. Now, double amputees or one amputee, they're allowed to use, I guess we're going to call it a stump pad. Okay, they can rest on it. Now, I've seen a picture, I think Dr. Jerry Clayton sent it to me, where the athlete had 2 paint cans. Now, when they bring out a pad or whatever they're going to rest the stump on, has to be the same color as the track. So one of the things when you do World Para call rooms, you have to make sure that you have the tape, different color tapes. If it's blue, if it's yellow, if it's orange, whatever color, you have to have enough tape, because those pads have to match what the color of the track is. Okay. Next. Key thing here, also when we do both World Athletics and World Para Athletics, this is common. Athletes must not wear clothing that impedes the view of the call room judges, the umpires, or if it's inappropriate, and whoever is chief call room judge can request athletes changing out of the inappropriate attire into other different clothing, okay, that meets the qualification that is required. Also with the hair, it happened at Can West here in Winnipeg, first time ever. A hair of an athlete, who was an able-bodied athlete, came right over, long hair down to, I would say, end of the spine, came right over. We could not see where fingers were because the hair came around. We had to stand up, and we had to address that and deal with that. So the hair has to be in such a manner that it does not impede the view of the officials. Okay, next. You've seen this picture before. There's all the various equipment. Someone asked me, what are those little cards over there? They're little hockey plastic cards that have the requirements of the clothing and what is allowed to be worn, and the measurements were there. Okay. And thank you. I think, David, you gave me this one, but it's all of the throwing frames that call room have to do. Now in call room, you have to be able to inspect the wheelchairs, the racing chairs, and you have to be able to do the throwing frames. Now, part of the duties now of the Sturgis assistants who are out in the track, because legally they are the final check on the racing chairs. So they will be brought in when we have to inspect all this equipment, because they have to make sure the braking, and they have to see if there's any aerodynamics has been added to the bike or anything else like that. So this does take a while. And everyone that you inspect, there has to be left on the frame or the throwing frame or the racing frame that the bike or the throwing frame has been successful or there are issues. Okay, and the chief call room judge has to keep a copy of every inspected piece of equipment in case there's the athlete has questions about why his or her piece of apparatus did not pass. Okay. WPA General Requirements, and this is as May 2022. the eye masks, the tethers, the helmet, guide runners. Also, no urine on the competition site, and that includes the call room. Next, please. And these are some other things that we're going to do inspections on. You know about the racing chair, the frame running, relays you have to know about, throwing events for seated athletes, the frames, maximum allowable standing height, which is MASH, and ear inspection. As I said before, little flashlights looking in both ears. Next. Call room. No unauthorized illegal items are taken onto the field of competition. They have to be taken out or they are confiscated. And there'll probably be a area in the TIC, technical information, if we are confiscating something after that, the TD or the competition director has looked at the equipment, will take it to the TIC where the athlete can pick it up. Now, you have to really know the relay composition requirements and how and make sure the call room is set up to meet the requirements of the athletes that are running in these relay races. And that's very important that you understand and know about Rule 23. The measure of MASH, okay, measurement of MASH. We will go through that. Okay, once again, these are things that we've talked about that have to be inspected. Okay, when an athlete comes in with a guide or an assistant, okay, they come in together and are considered as one, but both of them have to be inspected. Now, our job is, once again, we have to supervise the transit of athletes from the call room to their start line or to their event site. That is a responsibility. Okay, there's a slide right here. Basically, there's a pillar in this picture. You can see the picture, and then can you see there's sort of an arrow down the side there measuring from just the curve of the blade to the top of the shoulder. Okay, the gentleman in front is giving support so the athlete doesn't fall over. There will be a tape measure from the bottom going up, and usually we can put a ruler on the top to see where it marks on the tape measure. The rule of thumb is basically between when you extend your fingers, your hands straight out, that you measure from the middle finger tip to tip, and that is the height. On World Para, the athletes, that requirement should be on the sheet. But often, again, the technical delegate will probably be down supervising to make sure that the measurements are all done correctly for the athletes that have to be in this category. Okay, next. Stadiometer. It's basically, if you think of those of us who are a little bit older, remember going in as young kids to the doctor and having our height and weight, stepping on the scale. This is sort of what it's like, used to measure human height. Okay, and it slides up and down. Okay. Eye patches, there they are. There's the opaque glasses. There's the mask, and there's the glasses. That is the final inspection before that crew, that event that is going out for the T11s. The chief call room judge has to re-inspect those to make sure there is no way any light is getting inside. Okay, next one. Now, in this picture, as I said, they come in as a team. So There's a guide right here. They have the same uniform on. Okay, they're matching. I can see he's got a mask on. I put a circle because that's an old tether. Okay, it's not legal. We all know there's a legal now that has the loop and the stop buttons on there. Okay. Next. Oh, there's the tether. Notice the length of it, and the road race. For track events, it's 30 centimeters. For road events, it's 50, just down in the bottom there. And there's the fixed stoppers. That means they don't move. Those are the inside that connected where the red is there. Then the handles that fit in, and it slides to fit around the wrist. Okay. Again, if a tether breaks in a race, athlete is DQ'd. It is the responsibility of the athlete to ensure that the tether is durable and serviceable. Also, it is a requirement when we're doing World Para Athletics is that the call room has extra supply of these. If they come in and say they don't have one, we have to provide them. But that would be a task of collecting at the end of a race from someone from the call room area to make sure we get those back to be used for another day. Okay, next one. Road races. Okay. On the road races, they do not have to have the eye patches or eye mask or the opaque glasses. Okay. But you must have, for the T11s, you've got to have a guide, and they have to use a tether. There's no question about that. Okay. And it must be used properly. And if it's not used properly in the race, then the athlete will be DQ'd. Okay. And once again, the guide cannot finish before the athlete does. Okay. If the athlete is ahead, great. But if the guide is ahead of the athlete, there is an issue. All right, on the wheelchair and racing frames inspections. Next. Okay, best practices. Okay. Now, I saw a note why we inspect ear canals is for little hearing devices in there that communicate with coaches. And we have to look both the ears of the athlete, and if there is a guide or an assistant, we inspect those as well. Okay. And I did mention this before that starters assistants, they will be brought into the call room to help the inspection on the racing chairs and the race running frames and the helmets. Okay. Key thing is to make sure when you have inspected a piece of equipment that we put on a special decal, or we get to buy from a store a special pen, and we put an initial or a dot. That means that meat, let's say we're using a bright orange pen, that we put it on, that all the chiefs know that that is the mark that we are using for this said meat that we're working at, that tell everybody that that chair or that piece of equipment was inspected. Okay. And there's some more pictures. Next. Here are the throwing classes, the world para athletes for the standing throws. There's 19 of the classes there that explains, and each one has the explanation of why they have that code number there. I'm not going to go through that list and explain. The racing chairs, okay, 6 classes, there they all are. It tells you the differences. The race running, there's 2 classes. Right now, I think it's at 31, 32, but I think down the pipeline, maybe later this Fall that we will be, those two, that 31, 32 will be changing to 71, 72. But that's hasn't been done yet. So if that happens, we'll make sure everybody is aware of that change. Next. Seated throws, 11 classes. They're all there for you. The running and jumping, there's 18. And they're all listed there, tells you the various that of the categories. I just saw a note from Jerry Clayton. I understand there will be some more changes in the classifications after the fall there. So once we find that, I'm sure David and Louise will make sure all of us know about all those changes. Okay. Helmets there is compulsory. There is no, and that is as soon as they leave, they're all lined up, and part of the inspection, you know, we're checking the ears, the helmet, the bike, everything's working and everything else. The helmet has to be strapped up and on their head. It can't be on their lap or they're just hanging it off their bike. They have to have it on, have to have it done securely. Okay. And we check to see if we can find a safety standards sticker that meets the criteria that is set by World Para Athletics. Okay. Next. Oh, back up one, I think. Okay. Okay. Speedometers. Okay. With a GPS. Okay. Can be allowed as long as the communication function is not included in the device or it is turned off. And this has to be checked. It'll be checked in the call room, but you know, sometimes there's a long passageway getting to the track. Okay, the final check will always be the essays at the start line, making sure that that is checked. Okay, next. Part of the inspection this is called the wall test. And I was very fortunate to, the first time I did it, David Weichert and I were assigned to do the call room in Windsor, and we got to try this all out and learn a lot. Okay, just make sure that nothing extends past the tires. It has to be the tires touch the wall. Okay, the picture on the right-hand side tells you about the inclined plane of the pushing rims. Okay. Once again, you have to know the inspections of all these racing chairs and everything else. I had the pleasure of working with Louise Buskus at a meet, and we were measuring everything, and it was awesome. It's always great when you have someone who is from World Para that comes in. It's always a learning experience. It's great. Okay, the wheels, the braking and the steering, that is often at the end where they get to do maybe down a straightaway, or they get a lap to warm up. It is the responsibility of the chief SA and the chief starter and the crew down there to watch to make sure, okay, that it has a functioning braking and steering system. Okay. Okay, we all know there's no mirrors allowed. Okay, there's no, the height of the frame from the ground to the bottom of the frame has a certain height. Next. Okay, no aerodynamics. Okay, no communicating devices on it. Safeguards that protect the athlete from the wheels, they can be added onto the rims there. Next. Okay, this is the one picture. This is the race running frames. They propel. Now they are allowed, I don't think in this picture, but I think they're allowed blocks And this will be started as assistance that they have to help set up the blocks. They'll come out with an information form sheet from the call room that says how they want them set up so they can push off. And they propel by their feet. And they have requirements. You can see on the other side, there's a body support plate, and they are allowed to have a rear support saddle to sit on. Next. Here's the requirements of what is needed for these athletes. 31, 32, hopefully it'll be 71, 72. We'll find out in the fall. Everything is measured. So I believe this is quite popular over in Europe now, and it's catching on in the rest of the world, this racing frames. Once again, same as the wheelchairs, no mechanical gears or levers, okay. Using of special flaring or aerodynamics, not allowed, only hand operated. It has a maximum length of the frame there, okay, maximum width, all that has to be measured before a meet is done. Next. Athlete has to be strapped in on these race running frames to give the support, and they can have their hands strapped to the handlebar. Okay, once again, they have requirements in how the height cannot exceed 72. And as I said before, they have to propel with their feet. Next. Throwing frame brace has to be attached to the pole and frame. And there's a diagram. Okay. And this is to help to ensure the vertical bar does not move too much. Sometimes it would bend like crazy. Here's the list of things. Okay, for throwing frames, the vertical pole bar must specific requirements that have to be measured and tested to make sure it meets the standards for world athletics. Okay. Okay, for the throwing and vertical jumping events, there's some categories there. One assistant per athlete per event is permitted. Okay. For throwing events, the assistant must be capable of transferring the athlete from his or her day chair to the throwing frame. Horizontal jump events, okay. F11, 2 assistants per athletes, okay, per event. Okay, F2, 1 assistant per athlete per event is permitted. Okay, it's key for all the field events assistants, they cannot coach. They are usually separated, they sit in a different area away from their athlete, because once again, you're on the field of competition. This is your time to perform and take all that knowledge that your coach has imparted to them and see if they can do it. Next. Running events. Okay, T11, T12, they have options, but T11, okay, you have to have a guide runner. T12 have the option of competing with a guide runner or not. Okay, this is where the distinctive color comes in. Usually one set is yellow, one set is orange. Okay, we decide which one is going to be the field, which one's going to be the track event, one's for the field events. Okay, and I've said before, the reason why we need a washer and dryer is health reasons. We have to wash these vests. Next. Once again, T11 and T12 explains, okay. Now, on the road races, longer than 5,000, okay, you're permitted two 2 guide runners, but the athlete has to submit a request and get permission from the TD for this request. Okay, now, usually in big meets, they will have this information on the entry form that we know right away, yes, this has been approved for this athlete to have the 2 guide runners to come through. Okay, key thing is on that sheet, it should be stated there where the change is going to be taking place. Okay, and if the exchange is planned, it doesn't happen, unfortunately, that's the athlete's error in being organized with his guide runners, will be DQ'd. Okay, next one. Okay, this is sort of an idea of what I would recommend for how you staff an international or a national meet. You have 1 chief call room judge with 2 assistant chief call room judges, 1 being for the field, 1 being for the track. When they get comfortable, I also often change those 2. If you started off at track and you did it for 2 days, then the next 2 days, you might be assigned to do the field events. So you get to be proficient in both areas. I firmly believe in a control gate staff, usually about 5 there, 2 for the track, 2 for the field, and 1 announcer who has a PA system to call them in so they can hear it, that they know they're supposed to be at the control check-in gate. Depending on the number of athletes, pod leaders, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, depends on the numbers. Okay, again, for the call room judges and volunteers, those are your inspection people. It can vary from 50 to 60, 30 to 40, depends. Okay, always very important. I make sure there's always 2 at the entrance for security and 2 at the exit, just double checking who's coming in, who's going out. Okay. Event marshals, they would be the going out to the event site for the field events that they follow in behind. I always make sure for the track, that is the lead person who takes out all the documents. And the heat sheet for track events has that in the front. So that is a call room judge. The marshal would be at the end line, making sure we don't lose anyone in that event heading out to the track. Washroom escorts, we have to make sure we have an equal number of males and females taking the athletes to the washroom area, okay? And once again, the ITO, the chief, the call room referee, they are not your responsibility. They're to oversee the operation of the call room and make decisions, and they can act upon their own decisions. Okay, and there's the purpose of the call room gate, which I have talked about, but keeping an added one I've added in. Number 3, keep an eye on the warm-up area, because your call room chief can't get out there all the time, but if there's something that does cause concern and you think that the chief should be out there, that's why they have a walkie-talkie to communicate with whoever is the chief call room judge or the call room referee, that they can come out and deal with the incident. Next. Rule of thumb of what is allowed into the call room. This, once again, has to be approved, and I remind you, as it says in the competition director and the technical delegate, you have to work together with them. This statement that's got quotations around it, anything that could potentially injure an athlete should not be allowed in the call room. And that came from, at the time in 2010, from the IAAF staff member. And I've kept that, and I believe in that, okay? Now, another thing too is a call room, when you have that control check-in gate, and you see something that's wrong, let's say I'm out there and I'm running that controlled check and if you see athletes not with helmets on at World Para, when they're warming up, that has to be dealt with. They have to wear the helmets on the warm-up track and when they are competing. Next. All right, here's some things not allowed into the call room. Okay. Normally at World Athletics, there's no tape, but for World Para Athletics, on seated throws, it is allowed, but the tape is only for the non-throwing hand. And as it says, we tape the hand to the pole for support. Okay, no markers or tape measures, and that's standard for World Para and World Athletics, except high jump is allowed to have it. Common, no illegal shoes or spikes. Okay, no mobile phones, no iPad, iPods, any similar products along that line that can communicate are not allowed. Cameras, no video equipment, no nothing. Now, no umbrellas if meat is providing shade coverage, okay? If they have the big tents and big umbrellas out there, there's no reason for an athlete to take an umbrella out. If the athlete, they're not providing the umbrellas or shade areas, then we allow it to go out. But I make a point of making sure that is clear to the athletes. When you open that umbrella up, be very careful that you don't impale someone in the eye of the person who's sitting next to you. Make sure there's space that you can open up it safely and no one else is going to get injured. Think of our eyes. Next. Okay, I think we missed one. Or did we go? Okay. No drugs except those required for urgent care, and that's the World Doping Association. There usually is a list that you can go on the website, or they provide you with information on that if they're allowed to have that. No syringes, no illegal advertising on uniforms or equipment, and that goes with all the throwing frames or anything else. You can't wear the Olympics, as I said before, logo at a Pan Am Games. No, that has to be covered. Okay. When we are inspecting, you search everything, okay, that an athlete brings into the call room. Okay. That is why we've made a concerted push in the last decade or so to make sure they're limited and they don't bring tons of suitcases and sport bags. Look under the cushions on wheelchairs. Check the pockets in the clothing. Yes, they're allowed to wear a track suit to come in, but be aware that is part of the uniform. It has to follow the advertising code. You can check that. We only allow now one sport bag, not a suitcase, sport bag. Okay, we have talked about the ears of the athlete, the guide, the assistant. There should be no way an athlete is in communication with a coach or someone from the training staff. Okay, next one. Illegal advertising has to be covered up with duct tape. And the athlete is not allowed to remove this tape. Okay, and it's to do with sponsorship. Now, I was always told gray duct tape. Now I got a document from Belgium. They're having a world championship. They've now gone to having the call room make sure you have colored tape. For example, if you have an illegal logo on your running outfit and your top is red, well, gray, if I cover that up, stands out like a sore thumb. And it sort of attracts attention to, oh, something was covered up. Now I would go to the color tape, red on red. If the top is black, black on black, or gray on gray tape. So that's another change that I would be adding to the call room, that you have several rows, a different color to match every possible color that a uniform can have, okay? It is recorded on the heat sheet or the flight sheet, whatever, okay, that this tape is on, and the athlete must know that this tape stays on for the whole event. Okay. Also, don't have to back up, David, but also sometimes there's athletes that need assistance in setting up equipment. That's another that form that comes in with the call room. So whoever is leading the group out, make sure that you're going to a track event, it's handed over to the receiving starter's assistant. If you are going to the field event, that it's handed over to the chief, that they know there's the event sheet and requirements if they need something done, okay? The World Para Universal Relay, this is the competition. They have the requirements, what is set up. They do not use a baton, okay? It is done by touch. And the requirements are there, and it's very specific. And the call room, you have to make sure that the first leg, those are is either T11, 12, or 13. Second leg, you have to check those numbers to make sure that that athlete is in the category that is allowed. Same for the third and fourth. Okay, and there's a note there. No more than 2 athletes from sport class. Okay, hopefully we're moving out of COVID. Cross our fingers, everybody. Whenever there is a universal disaster across that affects the health and safety, you always have to make sure that you provide a safe space, okay? You have to follow the medical guidelines within your province or country for it, okay? If it says 6 meters apart, then 6 meters apart. If you need to have gloves on, you have to have the gloves on, the medical gloves, and you should be wearing face masks, the N95s that provide protection. Naturally, if it's a world epidemic that we're having, and you probably will not have the same number of volunteers and judges when there is no issue in the world. You will likely be working with a different timetable or schedule, okay? And most often you probably have less athletes. That's reality. We'll see what happens at these major events that are going to be coming up in the fall. Staff will need to have immunization checks, like take a now I know here in Canada we don't have to do that anymore, but some places might require, so make sure if you were traveling as an official that you do have the proper immunization information that is required for getting on a plane and going to another province. Make sure all your I's and T's are crossed. Next one. Yes, the last one. Thank you. I know some of you have been at a couple other presentations, but this was more trying to show the similarities and differences. I have to thank 2 outstanding gentlemen I've had the opportunity to work with. David Weichert, we all know from BC, and thank you for doing the controlling of the PowerPoint for me, David. I appreciate that. And I had the pleasure of working with this gentleman in Toronto, and wealth of knowledge, absolutely wonderful person to work with. So I have to thank Dr. Jerry Clayton. I know he's on tonight, and it's just so great. If you guys, any big questions, these are the 2 gentlemen plus Louise Buskus that you should be in contact with. They're paramount, they're great, they're awesome individuals. And if you do have any questions, or you've got some great photographs about the call room or anything that you think would help in keeping these webinars or these PowerPoints updated, that would be great. So thank you and stay safe, everyone, and take care.